Listen up, you pathetic broke woman. I've already filed the divorce papers. This house, everything in it, and that luxury car sitting in the driveway, all mine. And when this mess is finally over, I'm marrying Amber. My soon-to-be ex-husband's words sliced through the fever haze clouding my mind, each syllable a blade twisting deeper. Before the story begins, please leave a comment letting us know what part of the country you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe so the channel can keep growing and bring you more compelling stories. Naomi Williams lay in the king-sized bed that had once been a sanctuary but now felt like a prison. At 32 years old, she'd thought she understood how the world worked, thought she'd figured out how to balance success and marriage. She'd been wrong. The scarf wrapped around her hair was damp with sweat, her entire body burning with a fever that had confined her to bed for 3 agonizing days. Her throat felt like sandpaper, each breath a small torture. The room spun slightly whenever she opened her eyes too wide. That morning, or was it yesterday? Time had become fluid in her illness. She'd asked her husband, Ryan, to pick up fever reducers and antibiotics from the pharmacy. Simple enough, a basic act of care. But it was now evening, the sky outside their bedroom window fading from burnt orange to deep purple, and Ryan had not returned. The house stretched around her in expensive silence. No footsteps, no television murmuring from downstairs, just the relentless ticking of the antique clock in the hallway, counting down something she couldn't quite name. Naomi reached for the glass of water on the nightstand with a trembling hand. Her fingers, usually so steady and capable, couldn't maintain their grip. The glass tumbled onto the plush carpet, spilling what little water remained. She watched it seep into the cream-colored fibers and felt a tear slide down her temple. She was so tired, tired of being sick, tired of the slow, creeping change in Ryan over the past year. Ever since his promotion to senior vice president at Hammond & Associates, he'd transformed into someone she barely recognized. The man who'd once held her through her grandmother's illness, who'd laughed at her terrible jokes, who'd promised forever with tears in his eyes, that man had been replaced by someone cold, distant, contemptuous. The affair rumors had started 6 months ago. Naomi had heard whispers at the company holiday party, seen the way Ryan's assistant Amber looked at him with undisguised hunger. But Naomi had said nothing, done nothing. She'd hoped, foolishly perhaps, that it would pass, that the man she married would remember who they'd been together. Now, lying in her own sweat with a fever that made her bones ache, she understood with perfect clarity, hope had been a mistake. The sound of tires on the driveway shattered the silence. Naomi's heart lifted despite everything. He'd come back. He'd brought the medicine. Maybe there was still some thread of care left in him, some remnant of the love they'd built. The front door slammed open with enough force to rattle the windows. Heavy footsteps pounded up the stairs, not the steps of someone worried about a sick wife, but the aggressive stride of someone spoiling for a fight. The bedroom door crashed open. Ryan stood in the doorway, his 6'2" frame filling the space. At 36, he wore his success-like armor, the tailored charcoal suit that cost $3,000, his blonde hair perfectly styled with subtle silver at the temples, his blue eyes cold as Arctic ice. In his hands was no pharmacy bag. Instead, he held a thick manila envelope. "Ryan," Naomi's voice came out as a hoarse whisper. "The medicine. Baby, I need—" His laugh cut her off. It was cruel, sharp, a sound she'd never heard from him before. "Medicine?" He strode into the room with aggressive confidence. "I brought you something much better than medicine, Naomi. Consider this a cure for both of us." He threw the envelope onto the bed. It landed on her legs with enough force to make her flinch. "What?" Naomi fumbled with the envelope, her fever-weak fingers struggling with the clasp. She finally managed to pull out several sheets of paper. The header made her stomach drop. Petition for dissolution of marriage. The room tilted. For a moment, she thought she might pass out. "Divorce?" The word barely made it past her lips. "Don't act surprised." Ryan loosened his tie with a sharp tug. "Did you really think I was going to spend the rest of my life taking care of a useless, sickly woman? Look at you. You can't even get out of bed without help. You're pathetic." Naomi stared at the papers, then at her husband. She searched his face for any hint of the man she'd married, the man who'd proposed on a rooftop under the stars, who'd cried when they said their vows. She found nothing but contempt. "I've been carrying you for too long," Ryan continued, pacing the room like a prosecutor delivering a closing argument. "Do you know what it's like, watching you shuffle around the house, coughing constantly, always tired, always needing something? You're a burden, Naomi, a weight around my neck." "Ryan, please." Tears burned in her eyes. "I don't understand. What did I do wrong?" He stopped pacing and looked at her with something close to pity, but not the kind that comes from compassion, the kind that comes from superiority. "Your mistake was being poor, being ordinary, being nothing." He gestured around the master suite with its vaulted ceilings and custom furnishings. "Look at all this. This house, this life, the luxury car in the garage. It's all mine. I earned it. I worked for it. You brought nothing to this marriage, and you'll take nothing when you leave." The words hit like physical blows. Naomi's mind reeled, trying to process the cruelty, the calculation. This wasn't a spontaneous decision. This was planned. "The house is in my name," Ryan continued, his voice taking on a satisfied edge. "The car's in my name. Everything's in my name. You signed the prenup, remember? You get nothing in the divorce. Not one penny." Naomi remembered the prenup. She'd signed it without reading it carefully because she'd been in love, because she'd trusted him, because she'd never imagined they'd need it. "And there's something else you should know." Ryan's mouth curved into a smile that made Naomi's blood run cold. "When this is finalized, I'm marrying Amber. She's 28, healthier, and she doesn't drag me down with constant illness. She actually appreciates what I've accomplished. She understands what it means to be married to a successful man, unlike you." There it was, confirmation of what Naomi had suspected but never wanted to believe. Amber, his 28-year-old assistant with the magazine-perfect smile and the designer wardrobe. "How long?" Naomi whispered. "Does it matter? 6 months, maybe 8. I stopped keeping track." He checked his watch, a Rolex she'd purchased from Essence Empire's profits for their 3rd anniversary, though he'd believed her story about saving up for months from her allowance. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so painful. "I want you gone by morning," Ryan said, his tone final. "Pack whatever clothes fit in a suitcase, your old clothes, nothing I bought you, and get out. I'm sleeping at Amber's loft tonight. I don't want to breathe the same air as you." Naomi closed her eyes. The fever made everything feel surreal, like she was watching this happen to someone else. But the pain in her chest was real. The humiliation burning through her was real. "Tomorrow morning," Ryan said, straightening his jacket. "If you're still here when I send someone to check, I'll have you removed by the police. Don't test me, Naomi. You have nothing and you are nothing. Remember that." He turned and walked out. His footsteps echoed down the stairs. The front door slammed. A moment later, the roar of his BMW's engine faded into the distance. Naomi lay in the empty house, divorced and evicted in the same breath, her body shaking with fever and her heart shattered into pieces she couldn't count. For 15 minutes, she cried, deep, wrenching sobs that tore from somewhere primal. She cried for the marriage she'd thought she had. She cried for the man who'd disappeared. She cried for her own foolishness in believing that love could survive contempt. But then, slowly, the tears stopped. Her breathing steadied, and beneath the fever, beneath the grief, something else began to rise, something cold and sharp and absolutely certain. Naomi's hand slid under her pillow, not her regular pillow, but the decorative one she kept on the far side of the bed. Her fingers found what they were seeking, a sleek smartphone, far more advanced than the basic phone on her nightstand. This phone was her secret, the one thing Ryan knew nothing about. She unlocked it with her thumbprint. No social media, no games, just a few encrypted business applications and a single contact saved under a specific name. She pressed the call button. It rang once before connecting. "Good evening, Mrs. Williams." The voice was professional, concerned, and deeply familiar. "You're calling at this hour. Are you all right? I was told you weren't feeling well." Naomi took a breath that steadied her despite the fever. When she spoke, her voice was hoarse but absolutely clear. "Patricia," she said, "activate the contingency plan." A pause. Then Patricia Evans's voice turned sharp with focus. Understood. What happened? He's divorcing me, kicked me out, called me pathetic, broke, and useless. Naomi's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. He has no idea who I am. My God, the audacity of that man! Patricia's anger vibrated through the line. What do you need? Medical extraction. I'm sick, Patricia. High fever, maybe an infection. I need the VVIP medical team from Ridgemont Clinic. No sirens, no attention, quiet extraction. The concierge medical team will be there in 30 minutes with Dr. Richardson. Can you hold on? I have to, Naomi said, her voice steady despite the fever. Patricia? Yes? When I'm well enough, I want everything. The house, the car, his job, his reputation, everything he thinks he owns. I want him to understand exactly what he threw away. There was a moment of silence, then Patricia's voice came back, cold and satisfied. Consider it done, Mrs. Williams. The legal team will have the documents ready. Hold on. Help is coming. The call ended. Naomi set the phone down and stared at the divorce papers scattered across the bed. Ryan had just made the biggest mistake of his life. He'd kicked out his wife. He had no idea he'd just kicked out the founder and CEO of Essence Empire, a global beauty and fashion conglomerate that generated $2 million in monthly personal income, more than he would earn in 5 years. For her, at least, the game had just begun. If you're enjoying this story so far, please hit the like button and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring you more stories like this one. The 30 minutes felt like 30 hours. Naomi lay in the bed, her mind racing despite the fever that made her body feel like lead. She couldn't stop thinking about how perfectly she'd hidden her success, how carefully she'd maintained the illusion of being just Ryan's wife, nothing more. It had started 8 years ago, before she'd even met Ryan. Fresh out of business school with a degree in cosmetic chemistry at age 24, Naomi had used her grandmother's old recipes. Beauty treatments passed down through generations of black women who'd learned to make their own hair and skincare products because the mainstream market ignored them. She'd started in her tiny apartment kitchen, mixing shea butter and essential oils, creating formulations that actually worked on deeply melanated skin and tightly coiled hair. The business had grown slowly at first, online sales through a basic website, word of mouth in her community. Then, a beauty influencer with 3 million followers tried her products and raved about them. Orders exploded overnight. That's when she'd met Patricia Evans at a women's entrepreneurship conference. Patricia, then 54 and looking for her next challenge after retiring from corporate life, was a former Fortune 500 executive. She'd seen Naomi's presentation and approached her afterward. You have something special, Patricia had said, but you need infrastructure. Let me help you build an empire. They'd formed Essence Empire together, Naomi as the founder and CEO, Patricia as the COO and public face. It was Naomi's choice to remain behind the scenes. She'd wanted to build something without the pressure of public scrutiny, without people questioning whether a young black woman could really run a multi-million-dollar company. She'd met Ryan 3 years into Essence Empire's explosive growth, 5 years ago when she was 27 and he was 33. He'd been charming, attentive, successful in his own right as a rising VP at Hammond & Associates. She'd fallen hard and fast, and when he'd proposed after a year of dating, she'd said yes without hesitation. That was 4 years ago. 4 years of marriage where she'd kept her greatest achievement secret, hoping love would be enough. But she'd never told him about Essence Empire. At first, it was because she wanted to be loved for herself, not her money. Then, as she watched Ryan's career advance and his ego inflate, she'd realized the truth would threaten him. He needed to be the successful one, the provider. So she'd kept working in secret, responding to emails late at night, attending virtual board meetings while Ryan thought she was chatting with friends. When Ryan bought this house and the BMW, he'd been so proud of securing the loan. He'd never questioned how easily it was approved. He didn't know that Essence Empire's investment arm had quietly purchased his debt from the bank 8 months ago when he'd fallen behind on payments. The house he was so proud of? It belonged to her company. The car he drove? Collateral on a loan she owned. Ryan thought he was king of his castle. He had no idea he'd been living in her property, driving her car, supported by her money this entire time. Now he'd thrown it all away for a younger woman and his own ego. Naomi's phone vibrated. A text from Patricia. "We're here." "Front door unlocked?" Naomi texted back. "Yes, bedroom upstairs, master suite." She heard the soft click of the front door opening, quiet, efficient footsteps on the stairs. The bedroom door opened slowly, and two people in dark medical uniforms entered, not the conspicuous white of typical emergency responders, but discreet black that blended into shadow. Behind them came Patricia Evans. She was 58 now, her silver-streaked hair pulled into an elegant bun, dressed in a sharp pantsuit despite the late hour. Her face showed deep concern when she saw Naomi's condition. "Oh, honey." Patricia's professional demeanor cracked slightly. She moved to the bedside. "Let's get you out of here." "I'm ready," Naomi whispered. The medical team unfolded a portable stretcher with practiced efficiency. They helped Naomi onto it with gentle hands, and one of them, a woman with kind eyes, started an IV line in Naomi's arm. "Temporary fever reducer to make you comfortable during transport," she explained. As they lifted her, Naomi took one last look at the bedroom, at the wedding photo on the dresser, younger versions of her and Ryan, smiling like they had the whole world ahead of them, at the custom paint color she'd chosen for the walls, at the life she'd thought she was building. "Leave everything," Naomi said quietly. "I don't need anything from this house." "Of course not," Patricia replied. "Everything you need is waiting for you." They carried her down the stairs, through the living room with its expensive furniture, and out the front door. In the driveway sat not an ambulance, but a black Mercedes-Benz Sprinter van with tinted windows. The interior was a fully equipped mobile medical suite, nothing but the best. As they loaded her into the van, Naomi caught a glimpse of the house one more time. As they pulled away from 847 Willow Ridge Drive, Naomi took one last look at the house through the van's tinted windows. Tomorrow, Ryan would wake up at his mistress's apartment, believing he'd successfully discarded his sick, poor wife. He had no idea the countdown to his destruction had already begun. The van's door slid shut, and they pulled smoothly out of the driveway. Naomi closed her eyes, letting the fever reducer begin its work, and smiled. 3 days. She'd give him 3 days to celebrate his victory. Then, she'd take everything. Chapter 2. The Mercedes Sprinter glided through the night streets like a shadow. Inside, Naomi lay on the medical bed while the doctor monitored her vitals with quiet efficiency. "Temperature is holding at a 104.2, the doctor murmured. "Possible respiratory infection, but we'll have a better picture once we get her to Ridgemont. BP is stable." Patricia sat in the chair beside Naomi's bed, her expression a mixture of concern and barely contained fury. "How are you feeling?" "Like I've been hit by a truck," Naomi admitted. The fever reducer was starting to work, taking the edge off the bone-deep ache, but she still felt weak. "But mostly I'm angry." "Good." Patricia's eyes glinted. "Channel that anger. We'll need it." "The house," Naomi said, her voice still hoarse. "The car. He said they're all his." A thin smile crossed Patricia's face. "Yes, he seems quite convinced of that. He's forgotten one crucial detail." "What's that?" "Who actually owns the loan?" Naomi felt a surge of satisfaction despite her illness. "Essence Empire Investment Holdings purchased it from Metropolitan Trust 8 months ago." "Exactly. When Ryan fell 3 months behind on payments last year, spending too much impressing his mistress, I assume, the bank was preparing to foreclose. You authorized the buyout to protect him, to give him a chance to get back on track. For the past 8 months, he's been making payments without realizing he's been paying your company, not the bank." Patricia's tone hardened. He never knew how close he came to losing everything, and now he never will. "What's the legal position?" Naomi asked. "Airtight. The loan sale agreement includes a morality clause, standard in our investment contracts. Any act of domestic abandonment, abuse, or infidelity triggers an immediate default. Our legal team has been documenting his affair with Amber for the past 7 months. Naomi's eyes widened. 7 months? That long? "I wanted to tell you sooner, but—" Patricia's expression softened. "You seemed to be holding on to hope that he'd change. I didn't want to be the one to destroy that. We started surveillance the moment I suspected something was wrong, and we've documented everything: video, photos, timestamps, irrefutable evidence. He destroyed it himself. Naomi stared at the van's ceiling. What's the timeline? We'll give him 3 days to savor his victory. Let him move that woman into your house. Let him celebrate thinking he's free. Then, our legal team strikes with the default notice. Full loan repayment demanded, $4.2 million. He doesn't have that kind of liquid capital. Exactly. Which means immediate asset seizure. The house, the car, everything. Patricia leaned forward. And there's more. Essence Empire just finalized the acquisition of 65% of Hammond and Associates, his employer. The board meeting is tomorrow morning. By noon, we'll control his company. Naomi's breath caught. You didn't tell me that was in the works. We've been negotiating for 14 months. It started as a routine investment opportunity. Hammond was undervalued and ripe for acquisition. But when I learned Ryan worked there, I accelerated the timeline. All regulatory approvals came through this afternoon. Perfect timing. Patricia's smile was sharp. I've been preparing for this contingency longer than you realize. Patricia, Naomi felt a flutter of something, not quite guilt, but close. Isn't that excessive? Excessive? Patricia's voice rose slightly. That man kicked you out of your own house while you were burning with fever. He called you pathetic and useless. He humiliated you, betrayed you, and planned to leave you with nothing. She paused, her eyes fierce. No, Naomi, this isn't excessive, this is justice. The van turned into a private entrance. Through the tinted windows, Naomi could see the discreet signage for Ridgemont Clinic, the most exclusive medical facility in the city, where celebrities and billionaires came for treatment away from public eyes. We're here, the doctor said gently. Let's get you well, Mrs. Williams. They transferred her to a private suite that looked more like a 5-star hotel room than a hospital. Plush carpet, elegant furnishings, floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the city lights. A team of specialists was already waiting. As they began their examination, Naomi's mind drifted back to how it had all started, back to the moment that had changed everything. 8 years ago. Naomi stood in her grandmother's kitchen, surrounded by glass jars and bottles, carefully measuring oils and butters. Her grandmother, May Williams, 73 years old then, sharp as a tack despite her weathered hands, sat at the table, watching with knowing eyes. You remember what I taught you, baby girl? May asked. Always respect the ingredients, Naomi recited. They've been healing our people for generations. Shea butter from Ghana, coconut oil cold-pressed, essential oils pure and potent. And why do we make our own? Naomi looked up from her mixing bowl. Because the products in stores weren't made for us. They don't understand our hair, our skin, our needs. May nodded slowly. That's right. But it's more than that. It's about knowledge, power, independence. You make your own beauty products. You don't need their approval. You don't need them to tell you you're beautiful. Naomi smiled. Is this about more than face cream, Grandma? Everything's about more than what it appears to be, child. May's eyes sparkled with wisdom. You got that fancy degree now, that cosmetic chemistry knowledge. But don't forget where it started. In kitchens like this with women like me, making do and making magic. Naomi had finished her first batch that day, a rich golden face cream that absorbed beautifully into deep brown skin. She'd given it to her grandmother first. May had used it faithfully, and within 2 weeks her chronic dry patches had cleared. Her skin glowed. You need to sell this, May had said firmly. This is too good to keep to yourself. Naomi had started small, a website built on a template, posts in natural hair forums, samples sent to beauty bloggers. The response had been immediate and overwhelming. Finally, something that works. My skin has never looked better. Why isn't this in every store? Orders flooded in faster than she could fulfill them. She'd quit her entry-level job at a cosmetics company where she'd been ignored and underestimated and devoted herself full-time to what was becoming Essence Empire. The name had been her grandmother's idea. You're building an empire, baby. Own it. Within a year, Naomi had expanded beyond face cream to a full line of skin care. Within 2 years, she'd added hair care products that became cult favorites. Within 3 years, she'd launched a luxury fashion line featuring designs from emerging black designers. The money had started rolling in. Not thousands, millions. She'd wanted to Nadatati, stay behind the scenes, to build without the scrutiny and racism that often faced black women in business. So when she met Patricia Evans at a women's entrepreneurship conference, it felt like fate. Patricia, then 54 and looking for her next challenge after retiring from corporate life, had been the guest speaker. She was a former Fortune 500 executive who'd taken early retirement. Naomi had worked up the courage to approach her after the event, showing her the products and a handwritten business proposal. Patricia had been amazed by Naomi's potential. "This product is excellent, Miss Williams, and your business strategy is very solid." Long story short, Patricia Evans agreed to join not as an investor but as a partner. She wanted to get back to work and saw Naomi's vision. They founded Essence Empire together, with Naomi as the creative force and CEO, Patricia as the operational expert and COO. Naomi asked for one thing, that her name not appear in public-facing materials. She wanted to remain in the background. Patricia became the public face, giving interviews, attending conferences, cutting ribbons. But every decision, every product formulation, every business strategy came from Naomi. She was the empire. She was Essence. Ironically, she'd hoped that Ryan being successful in his career would make him a better, more confident husband. But she'd been wrong. The more successful Ryan became, the more arrogant he grew. And Essence Empire, on the other hand, grew explosively. From skincare, they expanded into luxury fashion. The high-end clothing and accessories designed by Naomi became wildly popular in national and international markets: New York, Paris, Shanghai, and even Tokyo. A monthly net profit of $2 million was a conservative figure. That was Naomi's personal net income. The company's revenue was tens of times larger. Naomi kept all this wealth well hidden. She continued to live simply, accepting Ryan's allowance with a straight face while her own accounts swelled. She'd met Ryan 3 years into Essence Empire's explosive growth, 5 years ago, when she was 27 and he was 33. He'd been charming, attentive, successful in his own right as a rising VP at Hammond & Associates. She'd fallen hard and fast, and when he'd proposed after a year of dating, she'd said yes without hesitation. That was 4 years ago. 4 years of marriage where she'd kept her greatest achievement secret, hoping love would be enough. She'd thought she could have both, a thriving business and a beautiful marriage. She'd been wrong. The memory faded as Dr. Richardson completed his examination. Bacterial respiratory infection, as we suspected. We'll start IV antibiotics immediately. You should feel significantly better within 24 hours. Thank you, Naomi said softly. Patricia had been making calls in the corner. She ended the conversation and turned back to Naomi. I've activated everything. Legal team is preparing the default notice. HR at Hammond & Associates is preparing the termination paperwork. And I've had surveillance equipment installed at the house. We'll document everything your soon-to-be ex-husband does. You think he'll do something worth documenting? I think arrogant men always do. Patricia's expression was knowing. He'll bring that woman into your home, probably tonight. They'll celebrate. They'll be careless. And we'll have evidence of everything. Meanwhile, across the city, Ryan Foster stood on the balcony of Amber's downtown loft, a glass of expensive scotch in his hand, feeling like the king of the world. The city lights sparkled below him, and inside, Amber was preparing dinner, wearing nothing but his dress shirt. Baby, she called from the kitchen, how does it feel to be a free man? Ryan grinned. Like I can finally breathe. God, I should have done this years ago. Amber appeared in the doorway, backlit and beautiful. Was she upset? Who cares? She was too sick to put up much of a fight. Ryan took a long drink. By tomorrow morning, she'll be gone and we can start moving your things into the house. Our house, Amber corrected, moving into his arms. Our house, Ryan agreed, kissing her neck. Everything is finally falling into place. The promotion, the house, you. This is what I deserve. His phone buzzed. A text from his assistant at Hammond & Associates. Board meeting moved to 9 a.m. tomorrow. All VPs required to attend. Ryan frowned. That's weird. Board meetings are usually Thursdays. Maybe they want to congratulate you on something, Amber teased. Finally getting rid of that anchor around your neck, Ryan laughed. Maybe they do. He had no idea that at that very moment, the new majority shareholders of his company were reviewing his personnel file with particular interest. He had no idea that the legal notice being drafted in a downtown law office would arrive at his door in exactly 72 hours. He had no idea that the woman he'd called pathetic was currently receiving world-class medical care in a suite that cost more per night than his monthly salary. Ryan Foster stood on that balcony, scotch in hand, mistress in his arms, and believed with absolute certainty that he had won. He'd never been more wrong about anything in his life. Back at Ridgemont Clinic, Naomi was finally starting to feel the antibiotics working. The fever was breaking, the ache in her bones easing. Patricia sat beside her, reviewing documents on her tablet. "The house," Naomi said quietly. "I decorated every room myself, chose every paint color, every piece of furniture. I know. He's going to destroy it. He's going to let that woman change everything." "Probably." Patricia looked up. "Does that bother you?" Naomi thought about it. The house had been her dream home. She'd imagined raising children there, growing old there. But now, lying in this pristine medical suite, she realized something. "No," she said slowly. "It's just a building. And in 3 days, it won't be his anymore." "That's my girl," Patricia smiled. "Now rest. You're going to need your strength. We have a lot of work to do." As Naomi closed her eyes, letting the medication pull her toward sleep, she felt something she hadn't felt in months. Not anger, not grief, but power. Ryan had thought he was strong for leaving a sick woman. He'd thought he was clever for planning his escape. He'd forgotten the most important rule: never underestimate someone just because they've been quiet. Naomi had been quiet for 8 years, building an empire while he thought she was just his wife. Now the silence was ending, and Ryan Foster was about to learn exactly what his pathetic, broke wife was capable of. Drop a comment to tell us, have you ever been underestimated by someone who should have known better? The next morning, Ryan woke in Amber's bed feeling invincible. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows. Amber was still asleep beside him, her blonde hair spread across the pillow. He checked his phone. No calls from Naomi, no desperate texts begging him to reconsider. Good. She'd left quietly, just as he'd ordered. He showered, dressed in his best suit, and headed to the office for the mysterious board meeting. As he drove his BMW through downtown, he couldn't help but smile. This was his city, his life, his rules. Hammond and Associates occupied 3 floors of a glass tower. Ryan parked in his designated VP spot and took the elevator to the top floor, where the conference room overlooked the city. Other VPs were already gathering, looking confused. Emergency board meetings were rare. "Anyone know what this is about?" Mike Chen, VP of Operations, asked. Ryan shrugged. "Probably announcing another acquisition. You know how aggressive the board's been lately." At exactly 9 o'clock, the conference room doors opened. But instead of their usual board members, a different group entered, professional, sharp-eyed people in expensive suits. And at the center, a silver-haired black woman who carried herself with undeniable authority. Patricia Evans. Ryan didn't recognize her. He'd never seen her before. But something about the way she looked at him, a flash of recognition, of satisfaction, made his stomach tighten slightly. "Good morning, gentlemen," Patricia said, her voice commanding the room. "I'm Patricia Evans, COO of Essence Empire. As of yesterday afternoon, Essence Empire is now the majority shareholder of Hammond and Associates. This meeting is to inform you of the restructuring that will take place over the next quarter." The room erupted in whispers. Ryan felt his confidence waver. Essence Empire. He'd heard of it, some black-owned beauty company that had been making waves. But why would they buy Hammond and Associates? "Most of you will retain your positions," Patricia continued. "However, the new ownership has identified certain personnel issues that require immediate attention." Her eyes landed on Ryan. "Mr. Foster, we'll need to speak with you privately after this meeting." Ryan's mouth went dry. Around him, the other VPs shifted uncomfortably, grateful it wasn't them being singled out. The meeting continued for another hour, detailing the transition plan, the new policies, the expectations. Ryan barely heard any of it. His mind was racing. Why would they want to speak with him specifically? When the meeting finally ended, Patricia gestured for Ryan to follow her to a smaller conference room. 2 people from HR accompanied them. "Mr. Foster," Patricia began once the door closed, "I'll be direct. Your employment with Hammond and Associates is being terminated, effective immediately." The words hit like a physical blow. "What? Why? I've had excellent performance reviews. I just got promoted. Your performance isn't the issue. However, the new ownership has a strict code of conduct. We've received reports of workplace harassment, inappropriate relationships with subordinates, and conduct unbecoming of a senior executive." Ryan's face went red. "That's ridiculous. Who reported this?" "Multiple employees have filed complaints about hostile work environment issues. Ms. Chen's complaint is particularly serious. She reported that while the relationship appeared consensual, you created a quid pro quo situation by promising her career advancement and implying consequences if she ended things. That's textbook workplace coercion." Ryan's face went red. "That's not true. I never threatened her. She wanted this relationship." "Perhaps she did initially, but the text messages and emails you sent her tell a different story." Patricia pulled out her phone and showed him the screen. "Here's one from 3 months ago. 'You know I can make or break your career here, babe. Hope you remember that.' And another, 'Don't make me show everyone who really runs your department.'" Ryan's mouth went dry. He'd sent those messages during arguments when Amber had tried to cool things off. He'd been trying to sound powerful, trying to keep her interested. But stripped of context and displayed on a screen, they looked exactly like threats. "Ms. Chen initially didn't want to file a formal complaint," Patricia continued. "She was concerned about retaliation. But when new ownership guaranteed her protection and offered a substantial settlement, she came forward. She'll be receiving a promotion to a different division and a $250,000 settlement for the harassment she endured." Ryan's world tilted. No, that's not. She's lying. She's with me right now. We're together." "Are you?" Patricia's expression didn't change. "Mr. Foster, Ms. Chen has provided sworn testimony, text message evidence, and witness statements from other employees who observed your behavior. You're welcome to pursue legal action if you believe you've been wronged, but I don't recommend it. We have surveillance footage from company cameras showing multiple instances of inappropriate workplace conduct." Ryan felt the room spinning. This morning, he'd woken up on top of the world. Now, hours later, he was being fired, humiliated. "Security will escort you out. Your access badges and company credit cards are already deactivated." 2 security guards appeared at the door. "This is insane," Ryan said, his voice rising. "You can't do this. I'll sue. You're welcome to try," Patricia said calmly. "But I should mention that we have extensive documentation. I don't recommend pursuing legal action." As the security guards led him out, his former colleagues watching from their offices, Ryan's phone buzzed with an alert from his banking app. He pulled it out with trembling hands. A large withdrawal, his entire emergency fund, had been made from his savings account. But he hadn't authorized it. He tried to log into his checking account. Access denied. His credit cards declined. Ryan stood in the elevator, flanked by security guards, watching everything he'd built crumble around him. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a thought began to form. This couldn't be coincidence. But who? Who had the power to destroy him so quickly, so thoroughly? The elevator doors opened to the lobby. The security guards escorted him out onto the street. Ryan stood on the sidewalk in his expensive suit, holding the box of personal items from his desk, and felt the first real tremor of fear. His phone rang. "Unknown number," he answered. "Hello? Hello, Mr. Foster." The voice was professional, cold. "This is Sterling and Croft LLP. We're calling to inform you that you have 72 hours to vacate the property at 847 Willow Ridge Drive. The loan on said property is in default and asset seizure procedures have been initiated." The call ended. Ryan stood frozen on the sidewalk, his mind unable to process what was happening. His job, his accounts, his house, all of it disappearing in a single morning. And he had no idea that the woman orchestrating his destruction was currently sitting in a luxury medical suite, sipping tea, watching live updates from her legal team with a smile on her face. The game had begun. and Ryan Foster was already losing. Chapter 3. Ryan Foster had never known true panic until this moment. He stood on the sidewalk outside Hammond and Associates, his box of personal belongings clutched in his arms, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Fired, bank accounts frozen, house in foreclosure, all in the span of 2 hours. His hands shook as he tried calling his bank's customer service line. After 15 minutes on hold, he finally reached a representative. "Mr. Foster, I see here that your accounts were flagged for suspicious activity yesterday evening. There was an emergency collections order issued by—" The representative paused. "By the holder of your primary debt obligation." "What debt? I don't have any debt except my mortgage, and I'm current on that." "Sir, according to our records, your business line of credit, the $4.2 million loan you used to purchase your home and vehicle, was sold to a private equity firm 8 months ago. That firm has exercised its right to immediate collection due to a contractual breach." Ryan's mind reeled. "Sold? Nobody told me it was sold. And what breach? I've paid every month." "The breach appears to be related to Clause 11, Section B of the loan sale agreement, the Personal Conduct and Fiduciary Responsibility Clause. When the loan was sold to a private equity firm, you signed an acknowledgement that any acts of fraud, misrepresentation, or domestic abandonment affecting the collateral property would constitute immediate default." The representative paused. "I'm seeing documentation of domestic abandonment of a co-occupant with legal claim to the property. You'll need to contact the loan holder directly for details." "Who is the loan holder?" "Essence Empire Investment Holdings." The name hit Ryan like cold water. Essence Empire. The same company that had just bought his employer, the same company whose COO had just fired him. This wasn't coincidence. This was coordinated. But why? What did some beauty company have against him? Ryan's phone buzzed with another alert. His credit cards, all 5 of them, had been maxed out by an emergency debt collection procedure. His available credit, 0. His checking account balance, 0. He had $17 in his wallet. That was it. The BMW. He still had the car. He could drive somewhere, figure this out, regroup. Ryan walked to the parking garage, his legs feeling disconnected from his body. He reached his designated space and stopped. It was empty. A note was taped to the concrete wall. "Vehicle repossessed per loan default. Towed to Sterling and Croft impound facility." Ryan's knees went weak. He leaned against the wall, the box of office supplies spilling from his hands. His nameplate, Ryan Foster, Senior Vice President, clattered across the garage floor. His phone rang. It was Amber. Thank God. Amber would help him. They were in this together. "Amber, baby, something crazy is happening. I got fired. They're taking the house. They took my car." "Don't call me again." Her voice was ice. "I filed a harassment complaint against you because that's what my lawyer told me to do. I'm getting a $250,000 settlement from Hammond and Associates. Did you really think I was going to throw that away for you?" "What?" "Amber, we're together. We love each other. I said what I needed to say to secure my position. You were useful, Ryan. Past tense." She paused. "And honestly, you were never that great. The sex was mediocre at best, and you're kind of boring when you're not talking about yourself." The call ended. Ryan stared at his phone, unable to process this new betrayal. Amber had used him. Everything, the affair, the sweet words, the promises, all of it had been calculated manipulation. He'd destroyed his marriage for a woman who'd never cared about him at all. Ryan slid down the concrete wall until he was sitting on the oil-stained garage floor. Around him, his former colleagues drove past in their nice cars, heading to lunch, living their normal lives. His phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. "If you want answers, come to Essence Empire headquarters, 1 Commerce Plaza, 40th floor. You have 1 hour." Ryan read the message 3 times. It felt like a trap. But what did he have to lose? Everything was already gone. He stood up on shaking legs, left the box of office supplies on the garage floor, and started walking. The Essence Empire building was impossible to miss, a gleaming tower of blue-tinted glass that dominated the downtown skyline. As Ryan approached on foot, sweating in his expensive suit, his shirt collar damp, He stared up at the building with growing dread. He'd walked past this building 100 times and never given it a second thought, just another corporate headquarters. Now, looking at it, he realized how massive it was, how powerful. The lobby took his breath away, polished marble floors, a 3-story waterfall feature, impeccably dressed employees moving with purpose. This wasn't just a successful company. This was an empire, exactly as the name promised. Ryan approached the reception desk, suddenly aware of how disheveled he looked after his 2-mile walk in the midday heat. "I'm here to see," he realized he didn't know who he was here to see. "Someone sent me a message to come to the 40th floor. The receptionist looked him up and down with barely concealed disdain. "Name?" "Ryan Foster." She typed something into her computer. Her expression shifted from disdain to recognition and something else. Pity? Satisfaction? "Mr. Foster, yes, you're expected." She made a call. "Security, please come to the main desk." 2 security guards appeared within seconds, not aggressive, but clearly present. "Mr. Foster," one of them said, "please follow us." They led him through the bustling lobby. Employees stopped to stare. Whispers followed him. He felt like a criminal being perp-walked through a courthouse. But they didn't take him to the main elevators. They led him to a private elevator bank marked "Executive Floors Only." The elevator ride was silent. Ryan watched the numbers climb. 10, 20, 30, 40. The doors opened to a reception area that screamed wealth and power. Original artwork on the walls, leather furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. And standing there, waiting for him, was Patricia Evans. "Mr. Foster," she said, her voice professionally neutral, "thank you for coming. Mrs. Williams will see you now." "Mrs. Williams?" Ryan's confusion deepened. "I don't know any—" "Follow me." Patricia led him down a corridor lined with photographs. Ryan glanced at them as they walked. Magazine covers, award ceremonies, product launches, and in many of them, standing beside Patricia Evans was his steps faltered. The woman in the photographs was elegant, confident, powerful. She wore designer clothes and radiated authority. She was black, beautiful, and clearly someone of enormous importance. She also looked remarkably like someone he knew. No, it couldn't be. They reached a set of double doors. Patricia opened them without knocking. The office beyond was stunning. Massive windows overlooking the city, elegant furniture, awards and accolades displayed on custom shelves, and behind an enormous desk made of dark wood and glass sat a woman. She was wearing a cream-colored power suit with a silk scarf in shades of emerald and gold wrapped elegantly around her neck. Her hair was styled in flawless natural curls. Her makeup was subtle but perfect. She looked healthy, radiant, powerful. And she was Naomi, his wife, his pathetic, broke, sickly wife. Except she wasn't any of those things, and Ryan felt the floor drop out from under him. "Hello, Ryan," Naomi said, her voice calm and clear, nothing like the hoarse whisper he'd last heard. "Please, sit down." Ryan couldn't move, couldn't speak. His brain refused to connect what he was seeing with what he thought he knew. "I said sit." Naomi's voice sharpened, and Ryan found himself stumbling to the chair in front of her desk like a puppet on strings. Patricia closed the doors and stood beside Naomi's desk, arms crossed. "You look confused," Naomi observed. "Let me help you. You're currently in the headquarters of Essence Empire, the company I founded 8 years ago, the company that generates $2 million per month in my personal income, the company that now owns your former employer, your house, your car, and your debt." Ryan's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. "You called me pathetic," Naomi continued, her tone conversational but with an edge like a blade. "You called me broke. You said I brought nothing to our marriage." She stood up and walked around the desk with a grace that seemed impossible for the woman who'd been trembling with fever just days ago. She perched on the edge of her desk, looking down at him. "So let me tell you what I actually brought to our marriage, Ryan. I brought Essence Empire, which is currently valued at $800 million. I brought the loan buyout that saved you from foreclosure 8 months ago when you were 3 months behind on payments because you were too busy spending money on your mistress. I brought the house you were so proud of, the car you loved, the life you thought you'd built." Ryan found his voice. It came out as a whisper. "How? How did I not know?" "Because I didn't want you to know. Naomi's eyes were hard. At first, I wanted to be loved for myself, not my money. Then, as your ego grew and you became more arrogant, I realized you couldn't handle the truth. You needed to be the successful one, the provider, the man. She leaned closer. But here's the thing, Ryan. While you were playing at being a big shot, I was actually being one. While you were at office happy hours bragging about your promotion, I was negotiating international distribution deals. While you were sleeping with your assistant, I was building an empire. Naomi, Ryan's throat closed. What could he possibly say? Don't, she held up a hand. You had your chance to speak. 3 days ago you stood over my sickbed and told me I was nothing. Now it's my turn. Patricia stepped forward with a folder. These are the divorce papers, Mr. Foster. You'll notice they're quite different from the ones you filed. Ryan took the folder with shaking hands. As he read, his face went from pale to gray. $400,000? He looked up in horror. Compensation for emotional distress? I don't have that kind of money. You took everything. Correction, Naomi said coldly. I took back what was mine. And yes, you owe me $400,000 for the pain and humiliation you caused. But don't worry, I'm offering you an option. She nodded to Patricia, who handed him another document. A confession, Naomi explained. You admit to the affair, the abandonment, the abuse. You admit you were wrong. Sign it, and the debt is forgiven. Ryan stared at the paper. It was the ultimate humiliation, a written admission of every terrible thing he'd done. And if I don't sign? Then you owe me $400,000, which we both know you can't pay. You'll declare bankruptcy, which will destroy what's left of your credit and reputation, and I'll still have the evidence of everything you did, which I'll be happy to share with anyone who asks why you're living on the street. Ryan's hands trembled as he held the pen. This was it, the final nail in his coffin, his complete and total destruction. He signed. Good, Naomi said, taking the document. Now, let me show you something else. Patricia pressed a button on the desk. A large screen descended from the ceiling, and the lights in the room dimmed slightly. The screen lit up, showing financial charts and documents. Before we proceed, one of the lawyers in the room said, Ryan hadn't even noticed them enter, you should know that when Essence Empire purchased your loan 8 months ago, the property ownership technically transferred to our client as the lion holder. As the legal owner of a high-value asset, we installed security monitoring systems, standard practice for properties in our investment portfolio. You were notified in the loan transfer paperwork you signed, though apparently you didn't read it carefully. The video began playing. Ryan saw his own living room. He saw himself embracing Amber on the sofa. The date in the bottom right corner showed it was 7 months ago. Just a month after the surveillance was installed, the video changed to his bedroom. Ryan saw Amber trying on Naomi's clothes and scarves, laughing and throwing them on the floor, while he laughed with her. And the last video, the most damning one, 3 days ago, in the same bedroom. Ryan saw himself standing arrogantly in front of the bed. He saw Naomi lying weakly. He heard his own voice full of hatred echoing in that conference room. Listen up, you pathetic, broke woman. I've already filed the divorce papers. Get out of this house tomorrow morning. Stop! Ryan screamed, covering his face with both hands. Stop it! Please stop it! The screen went black. The room was silent again. We have irrefutable evidence, Mr. Foster, the lawyer said calmly. Photos, audio recordings, video surveillance, and witnesses. We know you kicked your wife out 2 nights ago. That is what triggered this default claim. Ryan couldn't breathe. Carolyn, this was all because of Naomi. But how? How did Naomi control all of this? Now get out of my building, Naomi said quietly. The 2 security guards who had accompanied Patricia entered. Take out this trash, Patricia ordered. Ryan didn't resist. He was already numb. He was dragged out, his arms held firmly. He was dragged through the crowded lobby. The employees looked at him with a mixture of pity and disgust. The automatic glass doors opened and Ryan was thrown back onto the hot sidewalk. He landed with no money, no job, no house, only a dirty pair of dress clothes and a signed confession of his sins that freed him from a debt. His ruin was now truly complete. For the second time that day, Ryan was thrown onto the hot asphalt. The glass doors of the Essence Empire building closed behind him, separating him from the luxurious world he'd just discovered belonged to Naomi. He coughed, the street dust entering his throat. His face was streaked with tears, sweat, and now dirt. For a moment, he didn't move. His body was paralyzed. His brain could no longer process the ruin that had happened so perfectly and swiftly. Fired, bankrupt, abandoned by his mistress, and publicly humiliated by the wife he considered trash. The confession of sins he had signed felt like a death sentence. Passers-by stared at him strangely. A man in dirty dress clothes, crying in front of a luxury building's lobby. A security guard from the building now stood at the door, watching him with a sharp gaze, making sure he didn't try to re-enter. Jason had to leave. He couldn't just sit there forever. With what little strength he had, he stood up. His knees trembled. He started walking aimlessly. Where to go? He had no home. He checked his empty pockets. His broken phone had been left in the lobby when he was dragged out. He now truly had nothing but the clothes on his back. His stomach growled. He was hungry. The last time he ate was the tense breakfast with Amber hours ago. The sun was beginning to set. The air was hot and suffocating. He remembered his friends, his party friends. He could borrow some money from them. He walked several miles to the cafe where they used to hang out. With a face full of humiliation, he entered. Several of his friends were there. "Ryan, my God, what happened to you?" one of them asked, shocked by his appearance. Ryan told his story, a distorted version. "She set me up, man. My accounts are frozen. Lend me some cash." The shocked friend's face turned cold. "Sorry, Jay. The news just spread on the group chat. You got fired from your company, right? An Essence Empire seized your assets. You're crazy to mess with them." Ryan was stunned. "How do you guys know?" "Everyone knows. You messed with Essence Empire. Sorry, man. I can't help you. I don't want to get into trouble with them." He turned and left in a hurry. The other friends pretended not to see him. Jason was left standing alone in the middle of the cafe. The waiter subtly asked him to leave. He was back on the street, humiliated. He was now a pariah. No one dared to touch him for fear of Naomi's shadow. If you're riveted by Naomi's revenge, hit that like button and share this story. Have you ever had a moment where someone underestimated you and lived to regret it? Tell us in the comments. Back in her office, Naomi stood at the window, looking down at the street below. She could see Ryan on the bench in the distance, a small figure far below. "Do you feel better?" Patricia asked gently. Naomi considered the question. "I feel something. Not better exactly, but vindicated." "He destroyed himself," Patricia observed. "You just gave him the rope." "No," Naomi corrected. "I gave him justice. There's a difference." Her phone buzzed, a text from her grandmother. "Saw you on that big screen downtown, baby girl. I'm so proud of you. Your granddad would be too. He's been gone 5 years now, but I know he's watching. Always knew you were destined for greatness." Naomi smiled, genuine this time. This, the business, the success, the empire, this was what mattered. Not revenge, not Ryan, but the proof that she'd built something real, something lasting, something important. "What now?" Patricia asked. "Now?" Naomi turned from the window. "Now we get back to work. We have a Middle East expansion to plan, a product launch in 3 weeks, and a board meeting on Thursday. Ryan Foster was a distraction, an unpleasant one, but temporary." "And what about him? What happens to him?" Naomi shrugged. "That's up to him. He has a choice. He can let this destroy him completely, or he can learn from it and rebuild. Either way, it's not my concern anymore." But even as she said it, Naomi knew that Ryan Foster's story wasn't quite finished. Not yet. The next morning would bring one final lesson, one last humiliation, and Naomi would make sure she had a front row seat. Chapter 4. Ryan Foster spent the night on that bench. He had nowhere else to go. The house was locked and tagged with foreclosure notices. Amber had blocked his number. His friends, the ones he'd golfed with, drank expensive scotch with, bragged to about his success. None of them answered his calls. He'd tried calling his father in Connecticut. They hadn't spoken in 3 years after a bitter argument about Ryan's marriage. His father's response had been brief. "You made your bed, son. I told you that girl was too good for you. Figure it out yourself." His mother had answered more kindly, but offered nothing except prayers and the suggestion he find a church. His younger sister had simply said, "I met Naomi at your wedding. She was lovely. You're an idiot. Don't call me again." Even his family had written him off. As darkness fell over the city, Ryan curled up on the bench using his suit jacket as a pillow. The temperature dropped. He shivered in his expensive dress shirt and slacks, clothes that marked him as someone who'd once had money but now had nothing. People walked past, some stared, some looked away quickly, uncomfortable with visible poverty. No one offered help. This was rock bottom, Ryan thought. It couldn't get worse than this. He was wrong. When dawn broke, pale and unforgiving, Ryan woke with his muscles cramping from the hard bench. His mouth tasted like copper. His stomach growled with a hunger that felt like it was eating him from the inside. He had $17 in his wallet, enough for breakfast at a fast food restaurant and maybe a cheap motel room for one night. After that, he had no idea. Ryan stumbled into a nearby McDonald's, painfully aware of how he must look. Wrinkled suit, uncombed hair, the desperate eyes of the newly homeless. He ordered the cheapest breakfast sandwich and coffee, then sat in a corner booth trying to figure out his next move. His phone, the expensive smartphone Ryan had been so proud of, was down to 3% battery. He had no charger, no way to plug it in. Soon he'd be truly cut off. He pulled up his banking app one more time, hoping desperately that it had all been a mistake, that his accounts would be restored. Instead, he saw new activity. Another withdrawal, this time from an account he'd forgotten about, a small emergency fund he'd set up years ago. The entire balance, $2,000, was gone, swept up in the same emergency collection that had destroyed his financial life. Ryan's hand shook so badly that he nearly dropped the phone. A notification popped up, an email from a local news outlet. Former Hammond and Associates VP sued for harassment. Multiple women come forward. Multiple women? Ryan clicked the link with dread. The article detailed not just Amber's allegations, but 3 other women from his past workplaces who'd now come forward claiming inappropriate behavior. Some of the allegations were true. He'd been aggressive in his flirting, had pushed boundaries. Others were exaggerated or misremembered. But it didn't matter. In the court of public opinion, he was already convicted. His old headshot from the company website accompanied the article. In it, he looked confident, successful, powerful. The comment section below was brutal. Guys like this think they can do whatever they want. Glad he finally got what he deserved. Hope he never works again. Ryan felt bile rise in his Bayern throat. His reputation, carefully built over years, was obliterated. Even if he wanted to find a new job, who would hire him now? His phone died. The screen went black, and with it, his last connection to the world he'd known. Ryan sat in that McDonald's booth for 3 hours until a manager politely asked him to leave. He shuffled out into the bright morning, squinting against sunlight that felt accusatory. He needed help. Real help. Maybe he could go to a homeless shelter, at least for a few days while he figured things out. Ryan started walking toward the nearest shelter he knew of, about 2 miles away. The walk took him through downtown, past the Essence Empire building. He couldn't help but look up at the gleaming tower. Somewhere in there, Naomi was probably in a meeting, making decisions that affected thousands of lives, building her empire bigger and stronger, while he was literally homeless, walking to a shelter. The irony was so sharp it could cut. As he passed the building, a black town car pulled up to the private entrance. The door opened, and Patricia Evans emerged, followed by Naomi. Ryan stopped walking. He couldn't help himself. She looked immaculate in a burgundy suit, her natural hair styled in an elegant updo, diamond earrings catching the morning light. She was laughing at something Patricia had said, completely carefree. She looked happy, and then she saw him. Their eyes met across the sidewalk. Naomi's laughter died. For a moment, neither of them moved. Ryan's instinct was to hide, to run, but his legs wouldn't cooperate. He stood frozen, disheveled and desperate, while his ex-wife looked at him with an expression he couldn't read. Naomi said something to Patricia, who nodded and continued into the building. Then, Naomi walked across the sidewalk toward Ryan. He braced himself for more cruelty, more humiliation, but when she spoke, her voice was neutral. "You look rough." Ryan let out a sound that might have been a laugh. That's one way to put it. Where did you sleep last night? On a bench 2 blocks from here. The admission burned. I'm heading to a shelter now. Naomi studied him for a long moment. Why are you telling me this? I don't know. Maybe because you're the only person who still acknowledges I exist. Ryan's voice cracked. Everyone else has either blocked me or is actively celebrating my downfall. And you think I'm not celebrating? I think? Ryan swallowed hard. I think you're smart enough to know that completely destroying someone doesn't actually make you feel better. Naomi's expression shifted slightly. You'd be surprised at what makes me feel better. They stood in awkward silence. Around them, the city moved at its relentless pace. People heading to jobs, to meetings, to lives that had purpose and direction. Can I ask you something? Ryan said quietly. You can ask. I may not answer. Why did you stay with me? If you were building this empire, if you were this successful, why stay, married to someone who treated you so badly? Naomi looked away, toward the gleaming tower that bore her company's name. Because I loved you. Or at least, I loved who you used to be. And I kept hoping that person would come back. I'm sorry. The words felt pathetically inadequate. For all of it. For not seeing you. For the cruelty, for... Stop. Naomi held up a hand. I don't need your apology, Ryan. It doesn't change anything. Then what do you need? She met his eyes again. I needed you to understand what you threw away. I needed you to feel a fraction of the humiliation you made me feel. And I needed you to know that I didn't need you. Not your money, not your approval, not anything. I built an empire while you thought I was just your housewife. That's what I needed. Ryan nodded slowly. You got it. I understand now. Completely. Good. Naomi reached into her purse and pulled out her wallet. She extracted $500 in cash and held it out. Take this. Ryan stared at the money. Why? Because watching you be homeless doesn't make me feel better. It just makes me feel like I'm becoming what you accused me of being. Cold, heartless. She pressed the bills into his hand. Get a motel room, take a shower, buy some cheap clothes, figure out your next step. But understand this, I'm not giving you this money because you deserve it. I'm giving it to you because I need to prove to myself that destroying you didn't destroy the good parts of who I am. This is more than I deserve. Yes, it is. But my grandmother taught me that true power isn't in crushing people. It's in being able to show mercy when you don't have to. You needed to lose everything to understand what you threw away. You've lost it. The lesson is complete. What you do with it now is up to you, and it's no longer my concern. She turned to leave, then paused. Ryan? Don't call me again. Don't try to contact me. This is closure. Take it and move on. Naomi, wait. She stopped but didn't turn around. Thank you, Ryan said, his voice barely above a whisper. And I really am sorry. I know you are. But sorry doesn't rebuild what you destroyed. Learn from this. Be better in your next life. Then she walked away, her heels clicking on the pavement, disappearing into her building and her world, a world he would never be part of again. Ryan stood on the sidewalk, holding $500, and felt something shift inside him. Not redemption, he was too far gone for that, but maybe the first small seed of understanding. He'd had everything, and he'd thrown it away because he couldn't see value in something that didn't worship him. The lesson had cost him everything, but maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to learn from it. 6 months later, Naomi sat in a television studio, perfectly composed, while a journalist from a major business network adjusted his notes. They were filming a segment for a special on Black women entrepreneurs. We're live in 3, 2, 1. I'm here with Naomi Williams, founder and CEO of Essence Empire, the fastest-growing beauty and fashion conglomerate in North America. Ms. Williams, your company's valuation has doubled in the past year alone. What's the secret to your success? Naomi smiled, the same composed smile she'd perfected over years of building her empire in secret. There's no secret, really. I started with a vision, creating products for women who'd been ignored by the mainstream beauty industry. I worked hard, made smart decisions, and surrounded myself with people smarter than me. You're famously private. Until recently, most people didn't even know you were the founder Why the secrecy? I wanted to build something real before the world told me I couldn't. As a black woman in business, you face a lot of skepticism, a lot of people waiting for you to fail. I decided to let the work speak for itself. And it certainly has. Essence Empire now operates in 43 countries. You employ over 3,000 people. Your products are in every major retailer. How does it feel to have built all this? Naomi paused, considering the question carefully. It feels like validation, not of my worth. I always knew my worth, but validation that taking risks, betting on yourself, refusing to be diminished, those things matter. They pay off. There's been some media attention around your recent divorce, which I won't be discussing, Naomi interjected smoothly. My personal life is personal. What I will say is that sometimes people surprise you, both positively and negatively. And when someone shows you who they really are, believe them. Don't waste time hoping they'll become someone else. The journalist nodded, sensing the boundary. Final question. What advice would you give to women watching this who have big dreams but feel invisible or underestimated? Naomi looked directly into the camera. Document everything you do. Build in silence if you need to. Trust your own judgment more than anyone else's opinion. And remember, just because someone can't see your value doesn't mean it doesn't exist. The world will catch up eventually. Make sure you're already miles ahead when it does. The interview aired on a Friday evening. By Saturday morning, it had been viewed 3 million times online. Essence Empire's stock price jumped 15%. Naomi watched the numbers climb from her penthouse apartment, a stunning space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. She'd bought it with cash 3 months ago, finally allowing herself to live in the luxury she'd been able to afford for years. Her phone rang. It was Patricia. Have you seen the social media response? Patricia asked excitedly. We're trending on every platform. Women are sharing their own stories. This is exactly the kind of publicity we wanted. Good, Naomi said, sipping her morning coffee. How's the Middle East expansion going? Contracts signed yesterday. We'll have stores in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and Riyadh by next quarter. They talked business for 20 minutes before Naomi ended the call. She had a full day ahead. A product launch, a meeting with potential investors, a photo shoot for a magazine cover. Her life was full, purposeful, successful. She thought about Ryan occasionally, wondered if he'd managed to get back on his feet. She'd heard through mutual acquaintances that he'd taken a job in sales at a small company, making a fraction of what he'd earned before. He'd moved to a different city, started over. She hoped he'd learned something from their catastrophic end. But whether he had or not, it was no longer her concern. Naomi Williams had moved on to bigger, better things. She had an empire to run. Meanwhile, in a modest apartment in a city 3 states away, Ryan Foster sat at a second-hand desk, working on a sales report. His apartment was small, a studio really, but it was clean and it was his. The past 6 months had been the hardest of his life. He'd taken the $500 Naomi gave him and used it to get cleaned up, buy interview clothes from a thrift store, and start applying for jobs. It had taken 5 brutal months and over 200 applications to find someone willing to hire him despite his tarnished reputation. Most companies wouldn't even grant him an interview once they Googled his name and found the articles about the harassment allegations. The small medical supply company that finally took a chance on him was desperate for sales staff and willing to overlook his past if he'd work on straight commission. The job paid $40,000 a year, less than a quarter of what he'd made as a VP, and he only earned that if he hit his aggressive sales targets. But Ryan had discovered something unexpected. He was good at this job. Without the ego and arrogance that had defined his previous career, he'd become a better listener, a better problem solver. His customers actually liked him. It wasn't the life he'd imagined, but it was a life. And it was real. He'd seen Naomi's interview online, watched it 3 times actually. Each time he'd felt the same mix of regret and admiration. She'd been extraordinary the entire time he'd known her, and he'd been too blind and too arrogant to see it. That was his burden to carry, his lesson to remember. Ryan closed his laptop and looked around his small apartment. No expensive art, no luxury furniture, just basic necessities and a growing sense that maybe, just maybe, he was becoming someone better than the man who'd destroyed his own life. He'd never have Naomi back. He'd never have the wealth or the status he'd once possessed. But he had something he'd lacked before: humility, self-awareness, the ability to see value in things that didn't serve his ego. It wasn't redemption, not yet, but it was a start. 2 years later, Essence Empire's annual gala was the event of the season. Held at the city's most prestigious venue, it attracted celebrities, business leaders, and influencers from around the world. Naomi stood on the stage in a custom-designed gown, the color of midnight with subtle gold threading that caught the light. Her hair was styled in an elaborate updo, adorned with delicate jeweled pins. She looked every inch the queen she'd become. 2 years ago, Essence Empire was valued at $800 million, Naomi told the audience. Today, I'm proud to announce that we've crossed the 2 billion threshold. The room erupted in applause. But more than the numbers, I'm proud of what we represent. Essence Empire exists because women, especially black women, deserved better than what the beauty industry was offering. We deserved products that worked for our hair, our skin, our needs. We deserved to be seen. She paused, her voice growing stronger. And now, we're not just seen. We're unavoidable. We're undeniable. We're proof that when you build something with purpose, when you refuse to accept limitation, when you believe in your own vision even when no one else does, you create something that changes the world. More applause, this time thunderous. To everyone here tonight, thank you for believing in Essence. Thank you for supporting what we're building. And to anyone watching who feels invisible, who feels underestimated, who feels like no one sees their potential. Naomi looked directly into the cameras filming the event. I see you. Your worth isn't determined by other people's inability to recognize it. Build anyway, dream anyway, succeed anyway. The gala continued for hours. Naomi networked, posed for photos, accepted congratulations from people who'd once overlooked her. She was gracious to everyone, magnetic and powerful in equal measure. Late in the evening, Patricia pulled her aside. There's someone here who wants to meet you, Patricia said carefully. I told them you might not be interested, but who? It's Ryan Foster. Naomi's expression didn't change, but her heart rate spiked. What's he doing here? He's with the catering company, working. Patricia's expression was complicated. When Sterling Events submitted their employee roster for our security screening, I saw his name. I could have requested a different company, but I thought you might want to see what became of him, to close that chapter completely. But if you don't want to interact, I can have him kept in the back for the remainder of the event. Naomi considered. 2 years. She'd built even more in that time, proved even more. She was secure in her success, in her worth. Ryan Foster couldn't threaten that anymore. 5 minutes, she said, but not here, in the service hallway for some privacy. Patricia nodded and disappeared. A few minutes later, she returned with Ryan. He looked different, older certainly. The past 2 years had weathered him, but also somehow better, more genuine. He wore the catering company's uniform, simple black pants and a white shirt, no expensive suit, no arrogant posture, just a man who'd learned to be humble. Naomi, he said quietly, thank you for seeing me. I know you didn't have to. You have 5 minutes, she replied, her voice neutral. I just wanted to say, I saw you on stage tonight, the speech you gave. It was incredible. You're incredible. You always were, and I was too stupid and too arrogant to see it. Ryan, if you came here for forgiveness, I didn't. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. He met her eyes. I came to say thank you for the money you gave me that day, for not completely destroying me when you could have, for giving me a chance to rebuild. Naomi studied him carefully. Are you happy in your new life? Happy is complicated, but I'm better. I'm learning to be a decent person, the person I should have been all along. He smiled slightly. I'll never have what you have, I know that, but I have peace. That's more than I had before. They stood in silence for a moment. Your 5 minutes are up, Naomi said gently. Right, of course. Ryan stepped back. Congratulations on everything, Naomi. You deserve all of it. You always did. He turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. I tell your story to people now, the truth of it. I tell them about the brilliant woman I was married to who built an empire in secret. I tell them how I was too blind to see it. I tell them to pay attention to the people they love, to really see them. Why? Naomi asked. Because maybe if I can stop one person from making the mistakes I made, something good will have come from all this destruction. Ryan walked away, back to his catering duties, back to his small life. Naomi stood alone in the hallway for a moment, processing the encounter. She'd expected to feel triumph, to gloat over how far she'd risen while he'd fallen. Instead, she felt nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction, not even pity. Just indifference. Ryan Foster had become irrelevant to her story. She straightened her gown, touched up her lipstick, and returned to her gala, to her empire, to her life. And if anyone noticed a slight smile on her face for the rest of the evening, a smile of someone who'd won not just a battle, but an entire war, they were too polite to mention it. That was the real victory. Not revenge, though that had been satisfying. But the proof that her worth had never been dependent on anyone else's ability to recognize it. She'd known her value all along, and now, finally, so did everyone else. Thank you for joining us on this journey with Naomi Williams. Remember, your worth isn't determined by those who fail to see it. Build your empire, define your own success, and never let anyone make you feel less than you are. From all of us at Dear Love Diaries, we'll see you in the next story.